Hi, for quite a while now, I have been concerned with the state of World of Warcraft from the new player experience. We know that over time, of course, we're going to lose players to the game. We need to get players in. We do get some players in, but there's an awful lot of new players who find it very daunting, and I can well see why. Now, after BlizzCon, Blizzard have actually suggested that they are thinking of radically changing the new player experience, so I want to discuss my take on it and what I would do. So first of all, let's just go with the question that was asked. This was a question that was asked at BlizzCon, but it wasn't answered at BlizzCon. They ran out of time during the Q&A, something to do with Metzen shouting at the crowd. And so they answered the questions that couldn't get asked at BlizzCon Live afterwards. So one of them was, how do you plan to accommodate new players who are overwhelmed by the size of the content? And what they responded with, on one hand, the breadth and depth of World of Warcraft is one of the game's strengths. A new player entering Azeroth gets access to 14 years of content with entire worlds to explore and stories to unravel. But that same content can also be daunting. Including a character boost with our recent expansions is one way of making sure that players can always leap directly into the latest and greatest content, but that's far from a complete solution. It says, we're taking a fresh look at our new player experience with the goal of making it better reflect the quality and scope of the modern game. That's a long-term project, but it's an essential one as many brand new players try out WoW for the first time every way, and we want to make sure we're welcoming them into Azeroth and really showing off everything that is awesome about World of Warcraft. So, a couple of things I want to point out here. One a little bit snide, and one of them quite interesting. So it's first one where it says, a new player entering Azeroth gets access to 14 years of content. I'm going to argue they don't. They get access to 12 years. And the reason I say that is because the first 2 years has been pretty much wiped from the game. You know, all of the quests in what we call the vanilla content have gone. The zones have fundamentally changed. Some of the dungeons are sort of very similar, and the raids are largely unchanged. But of course, a new player leveling up to Battle for Azeroth content isn't really going to be bothering with the raids as they level at any rate, and may or may not do the dungeons, but nonetheless, virtually all of their experience is not going to be vanilla content for that 1 to 60 content. It's going to be Cataclysm content. So I'm going to say to that one, no. Of course, they could argue it's more, because some of the stories, of course, relate to stuff from Warcraft 1, 2 and 3. So if they want, they could argue it's like 20 years or whatever. Never mind. Minor little point there. But what was very interesting, it says, with the goal of making it better reflect the quality and scope of the modern game, that's a long-term project. So what I read into that was, first of all, long-term project means they are definitely planning quite a few more expansions. So my initial boast when it got to the 10th anniversary that we are going to be here for the 20th anniversary. Looks is on course. But the other thing is about this reflect the quality and scope of the modern game. This suggests that what they want to do with the older content is make it very much like the modern content. Now, one comment I get quite a lot on my videos is about expanding World Quest to older zones. If they want us to go out to those older zones, then they should do that. That's possibly one way of doing it. I don't know how much of a resource drain that would be to do that. Obviously, you base it on quests that exist there anyway, but you know, how does that work? Is that really what they're trying to do? Because if they were going to do that, what it would suggest to me is the best way to achieve that is not to have zone scaling in the way that it is now. Now, the people who've watched my channel for a while will know that I am not a fan of the particular way they did zone scaling. I'm a massive fan of zone scaling, just not quite the way they did it. I favour the Elder Scrolls Online version where everything scales. Whatever level you are, you can go to a zone. If you haven't done the quest in it, you can do the quest. They are level appropriate and will give level appropriate rewards. You enjoy the story in where, you know, I mean, there's not much of a progression with the story anyway. It flicks all over the place. Let's face facts. There are quests that you now do when you are level 1 to 20 that are set chronologically after the events that you do between levels 60 and 80. So let's face facts, they're all over the place anyway. What does it matter if we go all over the place? It doesn't follow a chronological order anymore. So that would be one possibility. However, I will acknowledge that there were a lot of people. This isn't one of those situations where when they did it the way they did it, I just thought, oh, they're not listening to the community again. I totally think they were. I think there's a significant amount of the community, it may even be a majority, I don't know, that actually like it in the brackets that it's in now. However, I think one of the main reasons why some people, and it may be many people, like that is because the content is still broken down into the expansions. It needs to be more seamless. So here's another thing, because there is another daunting problem for new players, and that's the sheer number of levels. Someone who's maybe played role-playing games before comes into the game and they're told you've got to get 110 levels before you can even begin the content that's been advertised. When they advertise the new expansion, all these things, island expeditions, oh, that sounds fantastic, I want to do that. Yeah, get to level 110 first, all right? Probably a little bit later. Warfronts, oh, get to 120 for that. Oh, these dungeons look cool. Yeah, you'll need to get to 110 at least for those. Oh, those raids, oh dear, looks fantastic. Yeah, you'll need to be 120 for that, and you need to get some gear. So, you know, a lot of the stuff that's advertised, you don't get to do straight away. Now, as they said there, they have the level boost, you know, your free character boost. The downside to that is you may well pick a character, especially a new player, and then you don't get on with it in the end. Yes, you've got the trial thing, but that's very, very limited. Doesn't really give you a fair old go at it. And it's a nice idea, the free character boost, but again, it's not... And you miss out on so much of the other stuff as well. You're missing out on the concept of the world. You're thrown straight into it. So what I would like is for them not to attach levels to the new expansion. When they advertise a new expansion, there are new features. There's new types of content that appear in it. The last few expansions has had new types of content. There's the new zones, of course, very exciting. There's the new quests, the new dungeons, the new raids, you know, new things. They don't need the new levels to go with it. So what would they replace it with? Well, you just have a set number of levels, and indeed it could just be 60 levels. That would be more than enough, quite frankly. And you just do that, and you do whatever zones you want. That'll leave you loads of zones at the end that you haven't even touched. Great. Because, again, if they had full zone scaling, you could go back and you could do world quests in those areas, or just the actual quests for which the rewards would scale up to you as well. Obviously, to be the equivalent of like 100, what would be now 120 rewards, which once you've got some dungeon and raid gear isn't going to be that great, but it's the sort of stuff you could still break down into useful materials in the scrapper or something like that. So it would still be useful to go out and do it, and you can still do it for achievements, whilst feeling that you're getting suitable gold and other rewards. You know, that sounds to me a lot better. And then, of course, what you'd need for progression is some sort of Paragon system. And the thing is and this is one thing where maybe Elder Scrolls Online is not as ideal as it could be. So they have a Paragon system in that, but with each, you know, passing of time, it goes up and up and up. So other players can still get left well behind it. And what I thought was, well, World of Warcraft effectively already has one. It's just that it's in parallel with the normal leveling, because we have a Paragon leveling system. We had the artifact. In Legion, we had our artifact weapon, and in Battle for Azeroth, we have our artifact neck. What if, take the artifact, I mean, the artifact neck is sort of going this direction anyway. So the effective level of the Azerite gear you can wear is tied to your neck level. Well, why don't they do that for all gear? Why don't they, instead of having more levels as you go up, you have your neck levels, which effectively are like the levels of that expansion? And that also ties in not only to your stats, not only to your abilities, but it also ties into the gear you can wear. So you need a certain level on that artifact to be able to wear this particular item level of gear. And what it means is, for new players that haven't played through the other expansions, is at the start of each expansion, if you're given this artifact, which you will then level up doing that sort of content, then you can get when you do your first quest for that expansion, you get that artifact, and it just sets it at the item level of the initial quest gear, which means it also allows you to access the item level of all the previous expansions gear. So you could even go into the mythic raids of the very final expansion, the very final raid of that expansion, and use that gear as well, because you've got the next expansion's even bare minimum artifact. That could be one potential idea. That's not necessarily the only way to do it, but what it means is, for both new players and returning players, you have a decent leveling experience where you get to come to grips with your character, get an introduction to the world. When you get to that level cap, you then begin your Paragon. There's nothing then to stop you carrying on questing if you like questing, if you're enjoying the storylines, because you will be getting level appropriate gear. They could open out world quests into all those zones as well for any level. So people could go and do world quests in whichever zone they particularly like the aesthetic of, or they like the storyline in. And when they talk about a long-term project, I can see that that would be one. I could see that that would take a little while. Because it may not even be a million miles from the truth what Blizzard are actually planning. Because they have said that on the one hand, they want to stop it being daunting. They've now accepted the concept that it's quite daunting. When the question of level squish came up about a year ago, they instantly dismissed it. Dismissed it completely out of hand. At BlizzCon, someone asked about it, and Ian Hazacosta seemed to suggest that maybe the doors open a crack on that. Now, at the time I said, I'm not quite sure what he's saying here. Is he just saying it is another PR tactic rather than just dismissing it out of hand and saying no? Because they've had a chastening few months. Maybe the last thing he wants to do is to say you think you want it but you don't again. But maybe the experience they've had over the last few months is so chastening that they are actually now prepared to listen. And also, maybe, and I'm only saying maybe, I'm not saying this has been the case, maybe in the past they've been a little bit cavalier about new players, and maybe they have now decided that they need to give it a serious look, because if they are going to lose longer term players, they have to recruit higher numbers of players to the game from new. Now, I'm only saying maybe that. I don't know that to be true. What I do know is that they've already improved the leveling experience by and large in the last year, and they've now said that they're looking at dramatically changing it to make it less daunting, and that it's a long-term project, suggesting they're not just talking about a few tweaks here and there, but something quite grand. What do you think it could be? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with other people who might also be interested. And until next time, I'll see you later.